You want me to do something?
We are live.
As soon as we're live, which is now. Oh, on the first one.
Amazing.
Perfect. So this, we're live, Senate Appropriations. We're going over FY 26 budget request. We have the Defender General in with us today to go over the Defender General office. So I'll let you introduce yourself for the record. And if you want to, which I think we maybe should, we'll go around and give our introductions if you don't know everybody.
Yeah, I know almost everybody, but it's definitely a different committee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not the one I've been seeing for the last 24 years.
Yeah. It's changed quite a bit. So we'll do our introductions first. And then
Senator Phil Baruch, Chittenden Central.
Pat Brennan, Grand Isle County.
Jenny Lyons, Chittenden Southeast.
Andrew Perchik of Washington District.
Bob Norris, Franklin County, and Al Wigan, Grand Isle.
All right.
And Watson, Washington District.
Okay. Well, I'm Matt Valerio. I'm the Defender General, and I've been in for a long time. I don't know how much I was asked before I started doing these budget things. Very first committee, very first chair I ever appeared in front of as Defender General was when Senator Weston was then a mere representative and the chair of the Appropriations Committee in the House. A long time ago.
It was a long time ago.
24 plus years ago. In any event, I was asked to give an overview of the DG's office for people who don't know about the DG's office. I know that most of you know. So I don't know how much you want me to tell you about it. I can give you my whole thing, and it lasts about an hour. If I do my whole slide, I had a time, they've done it like 3 times.
I know people want to stay till at least 6, so 3 hours.
All right, I'll give you one, but I'll give you, I know most of you
I think
know
most people know, so it would be a pretty abbreviated.
Yeah, for budget purposes though, if you want to read what we do and why we do it, it's all constitutionally based primarily, and the part that isn't is based on the Constitution and it's statutorily based. So we don't have any choice about what we do. We get cases, we can't turn cases away. Once they are assigned a public defender, either for a juvenile case, a criminal case, an appellate case, prisoner's rights case, whatever it is, we have to take it except for in certain limited circumstances in the prisoner's rights office. I've been advising the legislature and the governor's office over 4 different governors on criminal justice and juvenile justice matters for this will be my 25th budget, and through all of those times, except for this year, I've never had to ask for budget adjustment, and I actually didn't ask for any money in budget adjustment this time. You guys already passed it, but I just asked for the conversion of some positions. The bottom line is the restructuring that we did 24 years ago made the budget predictable. And once people understood what I needed, either the governor or the legislature or a combination of both has basically given me what I needed, so I never had to ask for budget adjustment.
You were in trouble then. Or you weren't. You came in when the place was in trouble.
It was in trouble. I remember that first budget. I had to come in. My predecessor had asked for budget adjustment of about $700,000. The budget was $6.7 million at the time. So the budget adjustment was more than 10% of the total budget. And actually, after we restructured that year, when we came back in, we had an $83,000 surplus, and all the bills were paid. So since that time, we've been able to do what we needed to do to make things work. That's obviously done pretty good things for our credibility. When I ask for something, people know I need it, and I don't come back and ask for something else. This is an organizational chart that you can barely see up there, and I can barely see it right here, but I kind of know it, so I don't really have to see it. You'll get this in a PDF, so if you really want to dig into it. We have 2 sides of the system plus the administration of the DG's office. The central administration office is here in Montpelier. We have what we call the public defense, primary public defense side of the program, and we have the assigned counsel conflict side of the program. So for those of you who don't know, if, like we had recently in Windsor County, there were 9 co-defendants in a drug bust that came in. So the staff office, or in that place, the contract office, but primary public defense contract office can take one of those. And then you have counsel conflict offices that take however many there are. So in that county, there's 3 or 4. They took 4. Well, then I had to find 4 more lawyers, and I have these things called caseload relief contracts that I developed along the way. They're all over the state, and they take the overflow from the conflict system and keep the cases away from the ad hoc system, which is, and you'll see why this is important down the road. The bottom line is we have a few different ways we provide the services. Ad hoc is far and away the most expensive, and so the whole system is designed around, and it's unpredictable, keeping everything you can away from the ad hoc side of the program, keeping it in your fixed cost predictable side of the program. So when I come in and I'll ask for, and talk to the governor's office about funding the contracts, making sure they keep up, which was not always the case. And we had some battles over the years with everybody about that, because it's all kind of an easy way to easy thing not to fund, because they aren't union and they aren't, there's no pay plan and there's nothing that rolls out. It's just like, what do you decide to do? They're easy people to ignore. However, they're the most cost-effective way that we do business. So you ignore those, and the cases end up going ad hoc and costing you 4 to 5 times as much. Bottom line is, over the years, developed this system to handle serious, what we call serious felony unit cases. Basically now, they're all murders, only murders. Then we have caseload relief contractors that handle cases that are only felonies that have overflowed from the conflict system. And we have some other minor sorts of contracts around that deal with some prisoners, one that deals with prisoners' rights, one that deals with the DUI on-call system. Why I'm talking about these sort of individually right now is every 4 these primary public defense contracts that I'm dealing with, they do the exact same thing as the staff offices. They are on 4-year terms, right? Oddly enough, they match my term. I've been advised I'm being reappointed if they can get around to the paperwork. So I'm renegotiating all of those contracts this year. But I've been doing this, say this will be my 6th or 7th time doing it. So they understand, but we have some changes going on. Orleans County, one of the primary public defense contractor in Orleans County, is retiring, gave up that contract. I'm in the process of trying to get another contractor in there. If that doesn't happen, I'm gonna have to put a staff office up there. If I do that, it's gonna cost a lot more money. And you'll see at the end of when I kind of get to the bottom line here, that that is a fluid situation. I literally had interviews this morning with the 3 finalists for that contract if we can make a deal. The bottom line is contracts are very, very important to making sure that we stay stable and stay within budget. And it gives me flexibility to move them around the state that staff offices can't do, number one. And with the most serious cases, the homicides and the serious sex cases, those are also absorbed by these contracts, takes pressure off the staff offices, and makes sure that the people have really good representation in those most serious cases. So you'll see this in this slide twice. It's kind of like I'll tell you what I'm going to tell you, and then I'll show you what I told you later. But the bottom line is the governor's recommended budget does certain things that are good. It basically continues the current service level in public defense, provides funds to deal with our staff salary and benefits and the increases there. We do have one collective bargaining unit, which is anybody who's not a lawyer in the defense system. they're all exempts. This is kind of weird. They're all exempt employees, but one of the group of exempts that is not lawyers do have a bargaining unit. So we don't have any problems with them. They don't have any problems with us. We literally get around every couple of years. I'll buy pizza. There's anything you want? Anything you want? No, we're okay. Okay, we'll just we basically follow the non-management agreement when it comes to raises and the like. But anyway, all of that is rolled out in this budget. It provides an increase for funding the 4-year public defense contracts that I was just talking about. This next one provides 2% increase for assigned council contracts. I had requested a 4% increase, and the governor's recommend gave 2% increase. You might have noticed the inflationary period we went through over the last couple of years. That has to be paid attention to, and I'm going to suggest at the end that it's not a lot of money. It's like between $50,000 and $100,000 due to 4% in a $29 million budget. Anyway, it provides increases for known existing office leases and property, all the utilities and maintenance and that sort of thing. One of the things we've got going on right now is the Addison office. Our landlord is not renewing our lease on relatively short notice. We have to move to another space there at expense that was not contemplated at the time we were talking to the governor's office. And even it involves, I didn't know about some of the increases that money we were gonna have to spend when I presented to the House. I gave them more information. I gave Trevor, Representative Squirrel, the information after, and I have more information now, literally as of within the last hour, as to what it's gonna cost, and I'll get to that. But there's a portion of that section that needs to be addressed. Provides increases for travel and the like. Provides our case management support. Other personal services has been a bane to my existence since COVID, primarily because everybody we used to do business with, psychologists, psychiatrists, doctors, investigators, all of that, doubled and tripled their rates. A good part of that has to do with the way things changed with the Department of Mental Health and how we've contracted with out-of-state providers to do competency evaluations. So when we have to do those as part of the defense function, the people who remained local doing that work saw that they're getting $600 an hour out of California where they were working, and our people who used to do it for $250 an hour are now also charging us $600 an hour. I've been talking about this I don't get to your committee
Yeah,
that
no, I
much,
haven't heard this.
but I've been talking about it for the last couple of years in the money committees, and it is an ongoing problem. The bottom line is the local folks are like, hey, if they're going to pay that for the folks to do the telehealth stuff, then we want the same money, and there's not much we can say about it because they're all locking in with each other. So that's always a strain, and we have within the conflict side of the program, courts have of late been asking people to show up more often in person as opposed to using video for certain stuff. There's a lot of issues regarding video that are going to be way beyond. I could do a whole day on that nightmare. But the bottom line is there's increases for travel to deal with that. I've kind of already done my bragging part about how good we are generally with money. We have a bunch of challenges that aren't met, and it's not a lot of money, frankly, relative to the whole budget. But we have to continue our caseload relief contracts, make sure they are funded so people will take them. We do have this renewal that we've got to deal with. of the primary public defense contracts, and then we've got the changeover in Orleans County, which if you're gonna change over a county, that's not the one you wanna change over in, there, Caledonia. Luckily, Caledonia did change over a couple of years ago, but I had somebody already lined up to do it. Northeast Kingdom is a very difficult place to get lawyers. They just don't exist. There are a lot of challenges there. The overall, the public sector, what we are dealing with trying to hire is not challenged by like what's going on in state government. It's challenged by where we have to recruit from. Vermont Law School produces almost no lawyers for Vermont. It's literally a handful, like 5 a year, and maybe 7. I have the actual numbers, but it's less than 10. And so we aren't really getting anybody out of there. And where we're getting people from is out of state, around in various places. You probably saw me in the news a couple of times when I wasn't getting any applications at all. And I had 7 openings, and of those 7 openings, 5 of them were open for almost a year. I said, I'm gonna go to the press, see what they can do. Luckily, nationally, the news picked it up, and I got an inquiry and hired somebody from Kansas. I hired someone from Delaware. I hired somebody from New Jersey. I can't really compete in New England because what's going on now is what you think is your normal regional recruiting base has so far outstripped our ability to pay that even if I do what I do, which is I haven't hired anybody at entry level in 5, 6, 7 years, it's always step 4, step 5 at the of our 15-step plan. But I have a niece who went to Vermont School, went to Holy Cross, went to Catholic University or something for law school. She was a good student, but she's not like number 1 in her class or something they're just going to throw gold bullion at you. In any event, she got a job at a medium-sized law firm in Boston. And her day 1 hadn't practiced law 1 day in her life. They paid her $200,000, plus $40,000 if she stayed for 6 months, plus a bonus after her first year if she made her hours, and they gave her $10,000 to move. So when in her first year she put $300,000 in her pocket and hadn't practiced law a day in her life, $63,000 ain't gonna cut it no matter how good your benefits are. If I'm trying to recruit from that pool. Now she wasn't at Hale and Dorr, she wasn't at one of those 15,000 lawyer firms. She was at a medium-sized kind of firm in Boston. That means there's 150 lawyers at it, but still, there's a whole bunch of those. That's what we are competing against regionally. So what we tend to do is get people from way out of state. Like I've hired a bunch of people from Colorado. Colorado's public defense system was in turmoil for a while, and they started leading public defenders. So they're like, well, what's like Colorado? Vermont. So they moved here for a while. A few of them stayed, and then a few of them went back. Right now, the New Hampshire Public Defense Office is in tailspin, and I've hired a couple of those recently. It's very, very, very difficult to hire people, and positions remain open for a really long time. And you have to do extraordinary things to get people in the door. None of this helps with dealing with the often talked about backlog. And I'm going to talk about that just a little bit so that you can see something with it. All right. So in fiscal year 24, which is the one that for us ended last July, we saw a 7% increase in caseload. If you want to, I have this broken down. You can look at it.
Small.
It's on our website if people want.
Yeah, it's small up there, but on the PDF that we sent over. Yeah, well, it's small for me too. I can barely see it, but I memorized 7%. So, this was on top of
Vermont County's doing good. They're negative.
This was on top of a double-digit increase the year before. But the bottom line is, you can see your county, how it's doing. Anything that I highlighted in yellow, you're seeing double-digit increases. Many of the smaller counties saw some lessening of the caseload, but when you've got the bigger counties like as far as caseload, Bennington, Chittenden and the like, Chittenden seeing a 20% increase in cases. That Chittenden represents 39% of the total caseload in the state. So,
That's because they're bad.
That's what we want to brag. Number one in criminal cases.
and,
But how many of them are convicted? We need to know that.
Well, I think he has a
well,
slide.
there's a whole bunch
Most
of,
people who beat the rap.
I do have a bunch of stats on that, but that's, again, another topic for another day. This is fiscal year 24, but I wanted to show you what the juvenile caseload, family caseload did. The interesting thing about this one is overall, the caseload was down 3.5%. However, you see that one that's 40.4%?
Right.
Termination of parental rights cases. Those are like the quote unquote, the murder cases of the family docket. Massive resources, and they take weeks to handle. So while everything else seemed to go down, termination of parental rights cases, I think they were storing them up during the pandemic. Over the last couple of years, have just skyrocketed. And those things clog a docket quicker than anything you can imagine. But overall, we're doing okay in that docket. 3.5% decline is not bad. There was an increase the year before. It's all right. But I wanted to let you know where the big issue was there. What types of cases? Just so you see that we already talked about that 7.2% increase in cases. And for us, cases are people. Charges are counts. So when you see an increase of 7.2, that's actually 7.2% more people. All right. Felony cases aren't up an awful lot. And honestly, misdemeanor cases aren't either, contrary to what you would think, but if you watch WCAX every day. What we did see massive increase in is probation violations. Those are the other cases, and that's almost a 60% increase. 60, that's crazy. I mean, so sometimes every now and then, like in a little county like Essex or in Grand Isle or whatever, you see a big number increase like that, but it's 5 cases. Well, this is not that. This is all over this is all over the state.
Yeah.
Just curious, what would you attribute that to? Is it because more people
Understaffing at DOC has been remedied to some degree, and now the people, rather things that they used to let go during COVID, they're now picking you up and violating you.
Okay.
And the state attorneys are.
It's not a question of more people being on probation?
I don't think so. No, because you see the caseload has gone up, but it's not close to 60%. You're talking about, single digit, even at 7%. If you add the last couple of years together, you're talking about 13%. That doesn't explain 60. It's just that, I think it's, people are getting sick of this is what this is anecdotal, and I don't like dealing in anecdote, but out of Rutland, I was asking now Judge, Mary Kay Lanthier, but she was my managing attorney in Rutland, and I said, the heck's going on down here? And she said, our caseload, all these types of cases are blowing up because we never saw these for about 2.5 years. And now, so people thought they could just ignore conditions of release. And now once they got serious about it again, now you see a skyrocket, and interestingly enough, the crime rate in Rutland has dropped right through the floor. There's something to be said about enforcement, to be honest. And it's not punishment that's the issue. It's when they believe they're going to get arrested, they won't do it. It's not, because once they're arrested, a lot of these folks have been in the system many, many times, and they're not afraid of jail, they're not afraid of probation or anything. It's just, but they don't want to get caught because they don't need the hassle. Nobody needs the hassle. Anyway, this is just another way of kind of showing you what I already showed you, that big increase in compared to, and I'll go to the next slide actually. This is the first quarter of I should have kind of reversed those slides, but this is the first quarter of fiscal year 25, which we are in now. We are almost have the first half done, but this data has been scrubbed. So on top of the 7% increase that we saw the prior fiscal year, the first quarter, we saw a 6% increase in cases as well. You'll see the other cases is 14.2% increase in the quarter. That's the one that was 60% for the last year. So you're seeing it starting to trend down, but it's still an increase. Nevertheless, why is this important? Because we talk about a backlog that we've been struggling with in the criminal justice system, particularly over the years. And this is raw data that from the second half, which is first part of fiscal year 25, but the second half of calendar year 24, and this is from the courts. This isn't my data. And you can see the bottom line is where the backlog was at any given month. So we started off in June at over 14,000 cases in the backlog. It starts to drop. And then it starts to, as it's normal, by the way, starts to pick up in the summer and into the fall. Now we're back in the 14s. Drops a little bit now as you get into the winter. If you look at this graphically, I'll show you in a second. But if you look at like the clearance rates, this is just for February. Anything on the right that is below, this is for criminal backlog, anything that is below 100% means we're losing ground on the backlog. The ones that are over 100% means we're gaining ground. And you see a couple there. But if you to summarize that, the statewide clearance rate was only 89%, which means we lost 11% in regarding the backlog. Only 4 counties made progress. 3 of those were the smallest counties in the state. All of the largest counties lost significant ground. And why is this happening? It's not just the backlog that we acquired during the pandemic.
Because we put a lot of resources to it.
Yeah, we did. But when no court is open, you can't resolve the cases, but you can't leave the people without lawyers either. So we get what we had during that 2-year period when the courts were effectively closed to resolving cases. Then we come out to double-digit increases, and then 7% increases, and then 5% increases. The new added caseload increases are going to become the backlog, right? It's not just the old cases that are the backlog. A lot of the low-hanging fruit in that has been resolved. You have a lot of serious cases that you see being tried around the state now, that because the ones that could have been pled have been pled, and then you've got the difficult ones that are left from the old days. But you're adding cases, and all of those new added caseload that I just talked about, they can't get to them, and that is just becoming part of the backlog. All right. If you look at this graph, this is the graphical one that I was trying to tell you about before. We're making a little teeny bit of progress, but as a practical matter, this is, as I've alluded to in other discussions, we're kind of paying off our credit card by making the minimum payment every month. In 39 years, we'll get it paid off. That assumes that we don't add anything else to our credit card. But this is what we're doing right now.
And was it ever this high if you went back 20 years?
No.
2004?
No.
What was it, like 200 cases or what?
No, I mean, that number would have been more in the 5,000 to 6,000 range. And Rutland County, for example, was renowned for its backlog, and it would have a backlog of 1,000 cases. And whenever they'd get under 1,000 cases, they'd declare victory. It was just one of those ones. And per population, Rutland was like dead average. So you split that up around the less populous counties, you're 5,000 to 6,000 cases. We're 10,000 over what we used to be in the older days, whatever days they were before.
And so that's just spiked during COVID, during the closure.
Yeah, that's what started it.
Yeah.
And so we would be dealing with our normal kind of flow where, oh, we had a year where we increased, you know. I remember 1993. And Vermont went crazy because there's like, we had 29 murders in 1993. Vermont averages about 11 murders a year. And they're like, oh my God, what's going on, right? In 1994, there were 4 murders. And then we, you know, do the average, right? You drop right back to where you were. Well, those are the kinds of things we'd see, like these massive spikes and, you know, someone said we had 1,000% increase in murders. Well, we definitely had something. But in our normal flow, we have these fluctuations in serious cases. But when you average it all out, that's why Vermont remains usually one of the 2 or 3 safest states in the nation. Usually we're number 1 or 2. And we remain that. You know, the justice system right now is clogged. And so you see these people who are not getting their cases resolved because there's no real way to do it. Now, I'm hoping that the new judges are going to help some, but it takes them time to ramp up. They just got appointed. That took a while. And hopefully that'll make some progress. And I'm not asking for new lawyers. I'm not asking for new contractors.
You got new lawyers last year, right?
No.
2 years ago?
No, I didn't get any new lawyers. I just want to keep funding the contracts.
Right, this is the contract.
Yeah, and because like with contracts, I mean, they're much more flexible depending upon where I see the need. And it's easier to get people who are in private practice to maybe take on a contract than to hire somebody in the state system. This was the thing I was telling you about right at the beginning. 4 ways we provide the services. Assigned counsel contracts, those conflict contracts that I talked about. Least expensive way we do business, $180,000, $183,000 per LEC. That means per lawyer equivalent caseload. What a lawyer equivalent caseload is the average number of cases, added cases, that the average public defender working 40 hours a week is supposed to be able to handle, right? And it's like an FTE, but think of it as, but it's an LEC, right? The PD contracts, like what you have in Washington County, Orleans, Caledonia, Essex, Windsor, Orange, and one juvenile, one is in Addison County, but those are the public defender contracts. And by statute, they have to save at least 10% compared to a staff office. I never added any contracts. Our state evolved this way. Our statute evolved this way, and so nothing has really changed in that regard. You know, I know when I first was DG and Howard Dean appointed me, the public defense system was not held in high regard at the time from an administrative standpoint. And people were worried that I was going to come in and privatize everything, but I didn't change anything. As far as the way we provide those primary public defense services. Then you have the staff offices, and they're 302,000 compared to the 225. And that really has to do with benefits is the biggest difference, and the fact that we're covering overhead. So we have to rent space in counties. But even at that, then if you look at ad hoc, which used to be the primary way that we provided all conflict services, even to this day, it's $671,000, almost $672,000 per LEC. We do everything we can to make sure that cases don't go to ad hoc. When I took over, ad hoc represented about 30% of the conflict system, and now it represents like less than 2%. So if you look, this is just historical, so you get an idea. You go down back to 2002, and you look at ad hoc total clients and criminal clients and juvenile clients, and this is what we've done over the years to make sure we are where we are. In year 1, that budget, and maybe you remember it, but we were at like 1.2 million, and we pay like now we're 24, 25 years later, and we're like 275,000. So we like saved $1 million compared to then, but it's like been every year for the last 24 years. So it's definitely been worthwhile.
Great.
I have, you'll never read this, but this is the ups and downs, and you get it in your packet, and it really is, as far as our budget goes, is effectively meaningless, because we aren't adding anything, and all we're doing is rolling out the stuff that we have and giving percentage increases for the contracts this is from the governor's recommended budget. If you have any specific questions about that, it's a waste of time, honestly, to go through it line by line. But and you remember this, we were talking about this at the beginning.
Yeah.
Here's the most important thing, and this has changed since the last time I did this budget. All right. What I absolutely know about that was not funded in the original governor's recommend were two things that added up to $117,000. One was, instead of 4% for our assigned council contractors, I got 2%. And so they shorted me. They didn't short me. They decided somehow to make the numbers work. I know nobody cares about $57,000 except I do.
Yeah.
But those, I'd like to have the 4% so I can pay the people what they need.
Yeah.
The other thing is, and this is, I should know better about budgeting after all of this time, but during COVID, we couldn't get together to do trainings. And so I said, well, I don't need that money. I should.
Never should have
That's
done
a
that.
bad
Yeah, well, yeah, and so every year since COVID, I said, oh, I need my in-person training money back. Yeah, and I never get it. And frankly, I ask for it every year in the house and in here, and I don't get it back. I need $60,000 so that I can train my people. Otherwise, what happens is, honestly, there's some contract that I don't put in place so that I can pay for training, which doesn't help with backlog and doesn't help with representation. Please give me the $60,000 I need so that I can train people.
Awesome.
Those are the two things.
When you come in here, do you give it that, send an email to joint fiscal so you make sure it's on the list?
I do it every time.
Okay?
And I
We'll
go,
make sure it's on.
and I go through my guy,
Already on the list.
who was, Dick Sears, and he was a great advocate for us over the years. God bless him. And I'm gonna say the same thing to the guy who has my budget now, get me my $60,000.
Did he say I was a great guy?
Well, I don't know you in this context. You've been fine over there, but we'll see.
I can live with wine.
So the things that there's one issue I also bring up every year, and I know how this works. We have a public defender special fund, and we have spending authority of about $598,000. It never collects $598,000. It hasn't done it in well over 10 years. But every year we get $588,000 in spending authority, and we collect $295,000, $300,000.
Where do you collect the money?
We don't collect it, but it comes from co-pays from the court orders. Some are collected by the court. There was a time when the department, or where the tax department was doing intercepts and the like. And back in my prior life, I was a lawyer for quite a while before I became DG, and I actually owned a collection agency. And the way we collect money in the state is just mind-boggling. We collect anything, but the great to have tax intercepts and lottery intercepts and that sort of thing. But primacy, recency, consistency. You got to call. Be the first one to call. You got to call all the time. You got to be the last person they hear from. And they do an intercept once a year to see if there's anything hanging out there. And if you don't have anything at that time, you don't get it. And there's nobody making any effort to collect the money.
So you only collect half of what your spending authority is?
Yeah, or less, yeah. I bring it up because what it really means is there is we really start every year with a $275,000 shortfall in the budget that I have to figure out what to do with. And I do it, you know, because in a budget like this, I ought to be able to figure out how to find 275,000 if I need to. But I'm just telling you again, that's not real money. Things that have come up since I spoke with administration folks, and since and some of it was available to the House when I went in there. Some of it had come up as these things evolve. I need to replace a server and some multiple servers. If you remember, maybe you don't remember, we're getting a lot of digital information now from law enforcement, video, audio, you know, all kinds of stuff. That takes up a lot of computer space. And ADS wanted us to use a Microsoft cloud application. And I did the math on it, and it was gonna cost me like millions a year to deal with this stuff, because there are these 3 tiers of charges, the way they work, like when it's an active case, when every time you access the active case, you get another charge. If you have to access it and then you manipulate it, and then you have to, so that you can like focus on like this area of the video, that costs more, and it adds as you go back in. When the case becomes closed, it goes into a stored file, but not deep storage. If you have to access that during a certain time frame, that costs you, but it costs you more than when it was that active file. And then after a couple of years, it goes into deep storage. So when prisoners' rights has to access it for some reason, you can still get it, and you can still do what you need to do with it, but then it costs you like 5 times as much as what it did when you got it in to begin with.
You store it all on your own servers now?
What I proposed, yeah, what I said is, I'm gonna make my own cloud. And I thought I was gonna save a couple $100,000 a year. We've been saving close to $750,000 a year by creating our own data farm. Like, they have it based in Rutland now, in a special room, and all these terabyte drives with triple backups and all this stuff. We need more servers to do this, but I've had this in place now for I think 4 fiscal years, and it's literally, we've saved like $4 million almost during that period of time. And so the 30 grand is to add additional storage space. The Addison County situation is the one that came upon us without notice. The landlord sold the building. The new person didn't want to renew the lease. We don't have, I don't know if you've noticed this, the most attractive constituency sometimes, so we can't, we don't, you know, it's not easy to get rental space, but we have some rental space. There are one-time costs related to that keep evolving as I'm dealing with BGS in this. And, you know, BGS security is like, yeah, we're gonna charge you 25 grand to secure the new place. And then ADS wants another $25,000 to do upfit of the digital switch and the wiring and that sort of thing.
This is for the Addison County office?
Yeah, for the Addison office. The rent is also gonna go up 20 grand a year. But the one-time money is that 50,000. The 20 grand is gonna continue over the course of the lease. The last part is, and I don't know about this yet, because I'm negotiating with these three people who are proposed to be contractors in Orleans, but if everything falls apart and I have to put in a staff office, that's gonna cost me 250 grand more than doing it with a contract. I don't know that, but I want to at least put you on notice that if the stuff kind of hits the fan in the next couple of weeks, I will let you know that this needs to happen, because I'll have to put a staff office up there. And that's just gonna be much more expensive. I'll have union people, I'll have state employees with all the benefits, I'll have to do the rent, and all the stuff that goes into doing a staff office. There hasn't been a staff office ever in the Northeast Kingdom. I'm hopeful that one of the 3 who we're negotiating with will be able to come to an agreement with. The Addison stuff is absolutely necessary because I really have no choice. The server is just good business, based on what I've learned about this over the last couple of years. And the PD Special Fund is, I'm just, again, putting it on your radar that this fund never produces anywhere near the spending authority. So, that's really the long and the short of it.
Okay.
And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the Defender General?
I wanted to go back to the mental health issue that you brought up earlier, the competency
Mhm.
issue. And if we, I know we worked hard on this, in trying to have more folks available for helping with competency determinations. I'm concerned that they're all going out of state and telemed or telehealth. What would happen if we lowered the boom on that a little bit in terms of how much paying for each consult, or is there more capacity in the state that would be available? If the price here went up slightly, lower the boom there, bring it up here.
Well, right now, they're all getting paid the same.
Oh, I know, but they're really happy, right?
Oh, they're very happy.
Yes, but then are you seeing any increase in the state?
You remember when we were talking about this maybe 2-3 years ago, and
Yeah.
we were talking about we're allowing PhD level psychologists
we
as
did it.
opposed to just psychiatrists?
You were great in helping for that.
Yeah, it was a good idea, and I thought, and in function, we basically got two
Yeah, of course.
PhD level psychologists decided to do it. It's just not an attractive, like I would say, not an attractive constituency to deal with.
Yeah.
And that's really the thing, if you're gonna be a psychiatrist or psychologist, you don't wake up and say, you know what I wanna do? I wanna determine competency for sex offenders. It's, you can go deal with, people with much more benign mental health issues, what present themselves in the criminal justice system. And I think it's just a deterrent to people. It's a subject matter, that people stay away from. The state hospital used to have 5 or 6 people. And you remember, this is probably during COVID or maybe right after, they all quit or retired. Like I'm seeing the same thing,
They got burned out. Yeah.
Or they just
Right.
got old.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm seeing it right now, but
Yeah.
lawyers in the state of Vermont, I'm one of those in this bubble that came in from the mid-80s to the mid-90s, where we had a lot of lawyers who came in. But I'm gonna be 62 this year, and I've seen my contemporaries, one by one, they retire, they die, they do whatever it is, and they're not here anymore, but they're not getting filled in on the backside. The young lawyers, there are very few, they represent a small portion. When I was part of I've been through all this bar stuff over the various years. I was president of the bar in 2001. During my period of time as a young lawyer, we represented 35% of the bar, the people who qualified as young lawyers. That bubble went through. That number now is less than 10%. And that is a huge demographic issue for being able to hire. But I think you see the same thing in all of the professions.
Yeah.
And, there are things that, we've done some things where we pay people 10 grand to come to the state, or now I think it's 7,500, but it like specifically excludes lawyers or people who work in the legal field. Like, I don't know, someone they don't want them, I guess. But the
We
bottom
don't pay
line,
anybody anymore,
but the bottom line is these they don't exist. So the ones who are here, they can kind of call the shots, So if I really need somebody, I've got to pay them, and I got to pay them more than you would think to do the work. But it's the same thing you're seeing with that exact group. The couple who came in as PhD level psychologists used to work for DOC, doing the exact same thing, right? So, which is fine, and they're good for us because they know that in and out. But there's 2 that came in. There's so few, I know their actual names. And it's just getting the number in. They have, it's kind of basic economics. They can command their price. We have to go out of state. We were using the folks from Cincinnati for a while, from Ohio. Then we went to California. Same company, but I guess they shifted. But it was the same money.
So Norris, did you have a question?
No, just got answered that.
Okay, thank you. Any other
She's
questions?
really good, she
She
mentioned.
knew your pro tem came back to ask a question?
No, I understand perfect.
Okay, any other last? You
No,
wanna make sure?
I don't think so.
I like your last slide.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I do appreciate, obviously, the opportunity and the courtesy I've gotten over the years. I know there's a few new faces, but,
We appreciate your long service to the cause there. It's definitely.
I do think that over the years, it makes a difference. You know, that you see department heads come and go, come and go, come and go. And, that's hard to deal with, when you, all the variables that are around. I will say, and I've dealt with a lot of folks over the years, and for a guy who stuck it out for the last few years, Nick Demmel, over at Department of Corrections, he's doing a tremendous job. And you know, we don't always agree with what has to happen or that kind of thing, but, it's a very, very challenging situation. And I give him a lot of credibility when he says stuff, so, for what it's worth.